In the lawyer's office, while we were discussing the inheritance, I saw my husband drip something into my coffee cup. When he turned away, I switched my cup with his greedy sisters. After just a couple of sips, she suddenly confessed to something unthinkable. Hello, everyone. Write in the comments where you are tuning in from. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Enjoy the story. But before all of that, before the clinking of the spoon against the porcelain, before the icy fear and the betrayal, there was just life, an ordinary life, thick as molasses, of a woman who was used to enduring. The sound that had defined Tiana's life for the last 10 years wasn't the voice of a loved one or music, but the sharp, hissing exhale of an industrial press. Hiss whoosh! A cloud of hot steam would burst from under the heavy lid, hitting her in the face, settling as moisture on her eyelashes, soaking into her skin. Inside the workshop of Glover & Sons Dry Cleaners, there was always a specific sour smell of chemical reagents and other people's dirty laundry. Tiana, the head seamstress, didn't even notice the smell anymore. She tucked a stray lock of hair back with the back of her hand. Her fingers were brown and calloused, the skin around her short-clipped nails red from the steam. It was just past 6 in the evening. Her shift had ended 30 minutes ago, but she was still standing at the spotting table, delicately treating the intricate lace on a wedding dress for yet another high-maintenance client. No one had asked her to. Tiana just knew that if she didn't do it herself, the trainee, Lainey, would burn the fabric, there would be a scandal, and she would have to deal with it anyway. "Tiana, Ms. Vance, you not heading home?" the security guard, Mr. Miller, called out from the front desk. She flinched, as if waking up. Home. The word should have sounded warm, but it echoed in her back with a familiar, aching heaviness. "I'm going, Mr. Miller. I'm going." She walked out onto the street, where the spring evening was already cooling the city, and trudged toward the bus stop. In one hand was a heavy bag of groceries, potatoes, milk, chicken on sale, and her son's favorite oatmeal cookies. In the other was her phone, which she checked every 5 minutes. There were no texts or calls from Leon. The bus crawled along slowly, swaying over the potholes. Tiana looked out the window at the flashing lights of new developments, but her thoughts were far away, in the old house on the outskirts that Leon had inherited from his father just 6 months ago. The house was sturdy but neglected, like an old man who had stopped taking care of himself. Dust accumulated there faster than Tiana could wipe it away, and the floorboards creaked, complaining with every step. When she entered the hallway, silence met her. Only the ticking of the old grandfather clock. Leon wasn't there. Again. Tiana took off her shoes, feeling her feet throbbing. She walked into the kitchen out of habit, unpacked the bags, and put the potatoes on to boil. Her movements were honed, automatic. This was her strength and her curse. She knew how to make sure life around her went on as usual, even if something was tearing apart inside her. Leon returned when dinner was almost cold. The lock clicked. The door slammed. "I'm home!" he shouted, but his voice didn't sound joyful. It sounded strained, as if he had rehearsed the phrase before entering. Tiana walked out into the hallway, wiping her hands on a towel. Her husband looked tired, but it was a strange kind of fatigue. His eyes darted around, avoiding hers. He worked as a foreman on a construction site, and usually when he came home, he brought with him the scent of pine sawdust, cement dust, and honest sweat. Tiana loved that smell. The smell of work, the smell of providing. She walked up to hug him, buried her nose in the collar of his jacket, and froze. There was no sawdust. Instead, Leon's jacket smelled of expensive, bitter coffee, and something sickly sweet and floral. It wasn't perfume in the sense of an affair. No, Tiana recognized that scent instantly. It was the heavy, suffocating aroma of Shalimar, which Rhonda, Leon's older sister, practically bathed in. "You were at Rhonda's?" Tiana asked quietly, pulling away. Leon flinched, as if shocked by electricity, and began hastily pulling off his boots. "Stopped by for a minute, to drop off documents. About the inheritance. Some forms were needed. He spoke quickly, stumbling, not looking at her. Anyway, I'm beat. Tiana, the site is crazy. The client is a beast. Is there anything to eat? Tiana looked at his back. He was lying. Not about being at his sister's. That was true. He was lying about the minute. The smell of coffee and perfume had eaten into the fabric so deeply, it was as if he had sat in Rhonda's car or a coffee shop for 3 hours. But Tiana stayed silent. She just went to set the table. Over the years, she had learned not to ask questions if the answers could ruin the evening. The only joy awaited her in the backyard. After dinner, while Leon, claiming a headache, went into the bedroom with his phone, Tiana went out to the garden. There, among the weeds she was methodically claiming back from desolation yard by yard, sat her son. Gavin was 8 years old. He was a serious, slightly introverted boy who loved this old house more than anyone else. "Mom, look," he whispered without turning around. Tiana walked over and knelt beside him, not caring about staining her housepants. In front of them, in the evening twilight, a huge, heavy peony bud was opening up. "Grandpa said these flowers need to be watered right at the root," Gavin said, gently touching a petal. "I watered them just like he taught me." Tiana's heart squeezed. Her father-in-law had been a difficult man, but he adored his grandson. This house, this garden, it was all a memory of him, the anchor that was supposed to keep their family together. "You did a great job, baby." She pulled her son close, inhaling the scent of his hair, which smelled of kids' shampoo and grass. "Grandpa would be proud. We're going to fix everything up here. We'll build that gazebo you wanted. Dad will help." Gavin was silent for a moment, then asked quietly, "Does Dad really want to live here? He keeps saying it smells like old junk." Tiana froze. "Of course he wants to, honey. Dad is just tired. He needs time." She lied again, and this lie, unlike her silence in the kitchen, left a bitter taste in her mouth. Later, when Gavin was already asleep and the night silence reigned in the house, Tiana went about her usual routine. She was gathering her husband's clothes for the laundry. It was a ritual. Check the pockets, turn out the sleeves. How many times had she found forgotten screws, lighters, crumpled dollar bills there? She picked up Leon's work jacket, the one that smelled of someone else's perfume. Her hands habitually slipped into the inside pocket. Her fingers brushed against something smooth and glossy, folded in half. Tiana pulled out the paper. It wasn't a receipt or a shopping list. It was a promotional brochure. On the cover, shining with an unnaturally blue sky and golden windows, towered a residential complex. "Emerald Heights," read the inscription in swirling font. "Luxury apartments downtown. The life you deserve." Tiana frowned. She knew this complex. The prices there were such that she and Leon would have to work 3 lifetimes to buy even a hallway there. Why did he have this? Maybe he was looking for a contracting job for renovations there? She unfolded the brochure. Inside, right over the floor plan of a 3-bedroom apartment, several numbers were circled in red marker. The price. And in Rhonda's sweeping handwriting, it was written, "3rd floor is better, view of the park." A chill ran down Tiana's spine. This didn't look like work. At that moment, Leon looked into the bathroom where she was standing. He had come out to get water, sleepy, in his boxers. Seeing the brochure in her hands, his face suddenly changed. The sleepiness flew off him instantly. "What are you doing?" His voice sounded sharp, almost screeching. Tiana flinched and looked up at him. "Leon, I was just checking pockets before washing. What is this? Emerald Heights? Are you taking a job there?" He stepped toward her, snatched the glossy paper from her hands, and crumpled it in his fist. His face went blotchy red. "What job, for God's sake?" he barked, and the echo of his voice bounced off the tiled walls. "You spying on me now? Digging through my things?" "I wasn't digging. I was about to do laundry." Tiana stepped back, pressing her lower back against the cold washing machine. She had never seen him like this. Leon could be irritable, could be weak, but never aggressive. None of your business. He poked a finger toward the brochure. Maybe I'm just dreaming? Do I have the right to dream about a normal life instead of rotting in this wreck with mold? But you're always prying, always controlling. He turned around and stormed out of the bathroom, slamming the door loudly. Tiana remained standing alone under the buzzing of the fluorescent light. Her heart was pounding somewhere in her throat. It wasn't about the yelling. It was about the fear she saw in his eyes a second before the outburst of anger. It was the fear of a person caught doing something shameful. She looked at her hands, dark, dry, tired. For the first time in many years, she was truly scared. She realized Leon wasn't just dreaming. He was planning something. And in this plan, written in red marker by his sister's hand, there was no place for their old house, and possibly no place for Tiana herself. The first crack had appeared in the foundation of her life, but Tiana didn't know yet that soon the whole house would collapse. Tiana didn't sleep all night, listening to Leon tossing and turning on the other side of the bed. In the morning, they didn't say a word to each other. He left first, tossing out that he'd meet her at the lawyer's office at lunch. In the waiting room of the law firm, it was stuffy, despite the air conditioning running. The walls, paneled in dark wood, seemed to press down on her shoulders. Tiana sat on the edge of the leather sofa, clutching her purse on her knees so hard her knuckles turned white. She was wearing her best dress, a modest beige one with small polka dots, the same one she wore to Gavin's kindergarten graduation. It seemed important to look dignified, even though inside everything was trembling like a taut string. Rhonda was already there. She was pacing the room, clicking her high heels on the parquet floor, and talking on the phone in a loud, confident voice, as if she owned the place. Yes, of course. The client is ready. The documents are almost done. Don't worry, Mr. Sterling. The park view is guaranteed for you. She hung up and turned to Tiana. Rhonda was wearing a bright scarlet pantsuit, too dressy for a weekday, and massive gold earrings that weighed down her earlobes. Why are you sitting there like a mouse, Tiana? Rhonda grimaced, looking her up and down. Where is Leon? He's always late when money is involved. He's parking, Tiana answered quietly. Her voice trembled traitorously. The door opened and Leon entered. He looked pale. Shadows lay under his eyes. In his hands, he held a cardboard carrier with 3 coffee cups. Here, he mumbled, not looking at his wife. Got some for everyone while I waited. There was a line. He placed the cups on the low coffee table. His hands were shaking so badly that brown foam splashed over the edge of one of the cups, leaving a dark stain on the polished surface. Careful, Rhonda hissed. Are you hung over or something? Leon didn't answer. He hastily wiped the stain with his jacket sleeve, smearing the mess even more. Tiana watched him, feeling a sticky, cold anxiety growing inside. Why was he so nervous? Why wouldn't he look her in the eye? She turned away toward the wall, where a glass display case hung with some certificates and trophies belonging to the law firm. The glass worked like a mirror. In its reflection, Tiana saw Rhonda's back as she dug through her purse, and Leon standing by the table. And then time seemed to slow down. In the reflection, she saw Leon glance at his sister, then quickly, with a fussy movement, take a small vial out of his pocket. He unscrewed the cap and dripped something clear into the cup on the end, the one standing closest to Tiana's seat. Then, just as quickly, he hid the vial back and nudged that cup slightly forward, as if inviting her. Tiana's heart skipped a beat, then another, and froze. The cold she had felt since morning turned into a block of ice in her stomach. Tiana, Rhonda's voice struck her ears. Stop staring at the walls. Come here. Look at this clause in the contract before the lawyer comes. It's urgent. It's about taxes, since you love counting pennies. Rhonda was waving some paper, standing with her back to the table. Leon stepped away to the window, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. Tiana slowly stood up. Her legs felt like cotton, alien. She walked to the table. Coming, Rhonda, she said. Her voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from underwater. While Rhonda, sighing irritably, looked for her glasses in her purse, and Leon stared out at the street, Tiana did it. One smooth, silent movement. She switched her cup and Rhonda's cup. They were identical, with the coffee shop logo. No one noticed. She sat back on the sofa, took the safe coffee in her hands, but didn't drink. She just warmed her icy palms against it. Finally, Rhonda plopped into the neighboring armchair, grabbed her cup, and took several large, greedy gulps. "Lord, I'm thirsty. The heat is unbearable." "Leon, did you skimp on the sugar? It's bitter." "There are 2 packets, Rhonda." Leon's voice cracked into falsetto. He was still standing by the window, not turning around. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The secretary poked her head in to say the attorney was delayed a bit longer. Rhonda drained her coffee to the bottom, crumpled the cup, and threw it in the trash bin. "So, Tiana," she began in a lecturing tone, "about the house. You have to understand that maintaining that wreck is not in my budget. Leon and I decided—" She suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Her face, covered in a layer of foundation, began to turn gray rapidly. Her eyes widened. "Rhonda?" Leon finally turned around. Rhonda grabbed her stomach, doubling over. "What the?" she wheezed. "Oh, God!" She was seized by a spasm so strong she slid from the armchair to the floor, unable to hold herself up. Her perfect hairstyle came undone. Her purse fell, scattering its contents. "My stomach is cutting me in half." She gasped for air like a fish thrown on the shore. "Ambulance, Leon! Ambulance! I've been poisoned. It's the coffee!" Leon froze in the middle of the room, white as a sheet. He looked from his sister, writhing on the parquet, to Tiana, sitting motionless with the untouched cup in her hands. "Rhonda, it's just," he babbled. Rhonda looked up at him, eyes full of tears and wild, animalistic malice. The pain evidently cleared up her guess faster than fear. "You!" she hissed through her teeth, curling up from a new spasm. "You idiot! You mixed up the dose. What did you slip me?" I didn't—" Leon backed away. "Ah!" Rhonda squealed, and the scream echoed off the wood panels. "How am I going to convince her now if I can't get off the toilet? You ruined everything, just like with the silver. We almost got caught by the neighbor loading it into the car, and now this! You are good for nothing." Silence hung in the office, broken only by Rhonda's heavy breathing. The words hung in the air, heavy and terrible. Just like with the silver, loading it into the car, mixed up the dose. Tiana slowly placed her cup on the table. The sound of cardboard on wood seemed deafening. She stood up. Her legs weren't shaking anymore. They simply refused to hold her. Tiana took a step and leaned against the wall, feeling the cold surface of the display case against her back. She slid down, right onto the floor, covering her face with her hands. This wasn't just deception. This wasn't just greed. It was a betrayal of such scale that her brain refused to contain it. Her husband, the father of her son, the man for whom she ironed shirts and nursed through colds, wanted to dose her with laxatives so she would humiliate herself just to get her out of the way, while he and his sister divided the skin of a house that wasn't even dead yet. And they were already stealing. The silver, his father's memory. A sound escaped Tiana's throat. Not a scream, not a cry, but a stifled, pathetic whimper. She clamped her hand over her mouth, trying to hold it in, but her shoulders shook in convulsions. Tears flooded out, hot and angry, washing away the remains of her cheap mascara. She sat on the floor in a strange office, in her best polka-dot dress, and sobbed, rocking from side to side. She saw Leon rush to his sister, helping her up, whispering something, but he didn't come to Tiana. He didn't even look in her direction. In that moment, Tiana realized she was completely alone and that the person she knew as her husband no longer existed. There was only this pathetic, shaking man wiping the sweat from his greedy sister's forehead, while his wife choked on pain on the floor. Tiana got up from the floor herself. No one offered her a hand. She brushed off the hem of her dress, fixed her messy hair, and walked out of the lawyer's office without looking back. Leon shouted something after her, but the words drowned in the noise of her own blood rushing in her ears. They returned home in different vehicles. Tiana took the bus. Leon arrived an hour later. When he walked in, she was sitting at the kitchen table. In front of her stood a cold cup of tea she hadn't touched. The house was quiet. Only the refrigerator hummed like a tired beast. Leon didn't start yelling. He didn't try to justify himself aggressively like back in the bathroom. He chose a different tactic, the one that had always worked flawlessly. He became pathetic. "Tiana, what did you imagine?" He sat opposite her, trying to catch her eye. His eyes were red and moist. "What poisoning?" "It was milk. Just regular spoiled milk in the coffee. Rhonda has always had a weak stomach. You know that. And what she said, she's having a nervous breakdown. Dad died. She's not herself. Delirious." Tiana looked at his hands, the same hands that trembled when he dripped something into her cup. Now they lay on the countertop, palms up, a gesture of openness, a gesture of pleading. "And the silver?" she asked quietly. She mentioned the silver. Leon covered his face with his hands and wept. It wasn't a restrained male cry, but the sobbing of an offended child. "She's sick, Tiana. Can't you see? She's making things up, getting confused. I just wanted to help her sell the house to pay off her loans. She's in debt, Tiana. Collectors are choking her. I'm her brother. I couldn't abandon her." He cried, and Tiana felt the familiar pity raising its head. How many times had she seen this? How many times had she forgiven his weakness, mistaking it for kindness? "He's just soft," she had told herself for years. "He just doesn't know how to say no." And now, looking at his shaking shoulders, she suddenly realized a terrible thing. She had created this herself. She remembered how 5 years ago, Rhonda borrowed all their savings for a vacation, claiming it was for business development. Leon hadn't wanted to give it, hesitated, but Tiana said, "Well, it's your sister, Leon. We have to help." Rhonda never returned the money. Tiana stayed silent. She remembered how Rhonda insulted her at family gatherings, calling her a washerwoman, and Leon sat with his face buried in his plate. And Tiana kept silent again to avoid making a scene. She allowed this to happen. For years, she fertilized the soil for this betrayal with her patience, her silence, her endless understanding. She turned her husband into a man who knew, Tiana will endure, Tiana will forgive, Tiana will move over. Leon's phone on the table pinged, then again, and again. "Who is that?" she asked. "Family," he muttered, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "Rhonda called everyone, said that you want to take the house and kick her out onto the street, that you caused a scene at the lawyer's." Tiana picked up her own phone. 10 missed calls from Leon's aunt, a message in the family group chat. "Tiana, have a conscience. Rhonda is in the hospital. Her blood pressure is up. How can you think about money at a moment like this? We didn't expect this from you. You came into the family with everything handed to you, and now you're making demands. Sign the papers. Don't embarrass Leon." A wall. A deaf, impenetrable wall. To them, she was an outsider, a laundress who thought too highly of herself. And Leon didn't defend her. He sat here in the kitchen, allowing them to drag her name through the mud, just to avoid admitting what he had done. "Sign it, Tiana," he whispered, without lifting his head. "Please, let's just sell this cursed house and forget it. They won't stop Rhonda. She'll destroy us if we don't give in. You know her. I want to save the family. For Gavin. For Gavin." That name sounded like a gunshot. The kitchen door creaked open. Their son stood on the threshold. He was in his dinosaur pajamas, disheveled, sleepy. In his hands, he held an empty velvet box. "Mom, Dad." He shifted from foot to foot. "Where are Grandpa's medals? I wanted to take them to school tomorrow for history class. The teacher said I could. I opened the drawer in the dresser, and it's empty. Just the box." Silence hung in the kitchen. Heavy, sticky silence. Leon froze, stopped sobbing. He shrank into his chair as if he wanted to become invisible. Tiana shifted her gaze from her husband to her son, to the empty box in his small hands. The grandfather had been proud of those medals. It wasn't just silver and brass. It was the family history, the little bit that made their lineage significant. Gavin listened to his grandpa's stories with his mouth open. He guarded that box like treasure. "Leon?" Tiana asked. Her voice was quiet, but there was no tremor in it anymore. "Where are the medals?" Leon was silent. His face went blotchy red. Probably. We moved them when we were cleaning up after the funeral," he mumbled, staring at the floor. "We didn't clean out the dresser, Leon." Tiana stood up. The chair scraped across the linoleum like a knife on glass. She walked over to her son, crouched down in front of him, and took the empty box. The velvet was worn, holding the prints of Grandpa's fingers. If she signed the documents now, if she gave in to keep the peace, she would teach her son the most terrible lesson in life. She would teach him that stealing from your own is okay, that betraying memory is normal if family does it, that the truth doesn't matter if the majority is screaming against you. She looked into Gavin's eyes, clear, anxious, waiting for an answer. "We will find them, baby," she said firmly. "I promise. Go to sleep." She kissed him on the forehead, turned him by the shoulders, and gently nudged him toward the door. When her son's footsteps faded, Tiana straightened up and turned to her husband. All pity had vanished, burned to ashes. Only a cold, ringing clarity remained. "I won't sign," she said. Leon threw his head back. "What? Tiana, you don't understand." "I understand everything," she interrupted. "I understand that you and Rhonda have already started taking things out of the house. I understand that you are more afraid of her than you are of losing me. But I am not giving up the house. Not now." She walked to the table, picked up her phone, and opened the family chat. Her fingers quickly typed a message. "There will be no signatures until a full inventory of the property is conducted. I demand an official inventory of everything in the house. If one spoon, if one medal is missing, I am going to the police. And I don't care what you think of me." She hit send and put the phone face down. "Have you lost your mind?" Leon whispered, looking at her with horror. "Rhonda will eat us alive." "Let her try," Tiana answered. She went to the bedroom, took spare bedding out of the closet, and threw a pillow onto the sofa in the living room. "Tonight, you sleep here," she said without turning around. That night, Tiana lay in their wide bed alone, staring into the darkness. She was scared. She was in pain. But for the first time in many years, she wasn't ashamed of herself. She had stopped being an accomplice. War was declared, and she had nowhere to retreat. Behind her stood her son, with an empty box in his hands. The next 2 days passed in stifling silence. Leon walked around the house like a shadow, flinching at every phone ring, while Tiana buried herself in work. It was easier at the cleaners. Here, dirt could be removed with chemicals, not tolerated for years. On Wednesday, close to lunch, the bell above the front door jingled. Tiana, standing behind the counter, looked up from the receipts. In the doorway stood a woman in a strict gray coat with perfectly styled blonde hair. Tiana recognized her immediately. Kira, the lawyer's assistant, the one who had silently watched the scene with the coffee from her desk in the corner of the office. Tiana's heart clenched. She came with new documents, with threats from Rhonda. Tiana instinctively straightened up, squaring her shoulders under her work smock. "Good afternoon." Kira's voice was dry, professional. "I would like to drop off a coat for cleaning." She placed a camel-colored cashmere coat on the counter. Tiana accepted it, trying not to let their fingers touch. "Stains?" she asked briefly, unfolding the item. "No, just refreshing." Kira looked around. There was no one in the reception area, only the hum of machines from the back. "And I also wanted to talk." Tiana froze with a marker in her hand. She slowly raised her eyes to Kyra. Up close, the assistant's face seemed tired. Fine lines lay around her eyes. There was no hostility in her gaze, rather some strange, tense determination. About what? Tiana asked warily. If it's about the documents, I told my husband everything. Not about documents. Kira lowered her voice, leaning closer over the counter. About the box. Blue velvet. Tiana felt her breath hitch. How do you— I went to school with Rhonda, Kira interrupted. She spoke quickly as if afraid she might change her mind. She was always like this. In school, she forced us to chip in for her gifts, and those who refused, she bullied with the whole class. I stayed silent then, afraid. Kira nervously adjusted the cuff of her blouse. On Tuesday, the day before your meeting with us, I saw her in town. I was going to lunch. Rhonda was coming out of Golden Era Antiques on 4th Street. She had that box in her hands, blue, old, with worn corners. Tiana gripped the edge of the counter. Tuesday. That day, Leon said he was going to help his sister sort through old books at his father's house. It's dusty there, Tiana. With your allergies, you shouldn't be there. I'll do it myself. Are you sure? Tiana whispered. Absolutely, said Kira harshly. I saw her handing it to the appraiser, and not just the box, also a bundle in a cloth. Something heavy clinked when she put it on the counter, sounded like silverware. The world around Tiana swayed. The silverware, the set of 12 spoons with monograms that her father-in-law only took out for New Year's. Tiana thought they had just gotten lost in boxes during the move. Why are you telling me this? Tiana asked, looking Kira straight in the eye. You work with her. You're taking a risk. Kira chuckled bitterly. I work with the attorney, not with her. Rhonda is just a client who thinks everyone owes her. Do you know what she said when you left that day, when she felt better? She said, "It doesn't matter. That fool will sign anyway. Where is she going to go?" Kira took a small slip of paper out of her purse and slid it to Tiana. These are dates. Tuesday, Golden Era. A week ago, the pawn shop on Station Avenue, she took a men's gold watch there. I saw the receipt. It fell out of her folder when she was getting her ID. A victory watch, a ward piece. The watch, the one Leon said was broken and he had taken to get repaired. Tiana looked at Kyra's neat handwriting, and the puzzle pieces fell into place before her eyes. There was no chaos. There was no absent-mindedness from grief. There was a cold, calculated scheme. While Tiana prepared the wake, while she comforted a crying Gavin, while she tried to support Leon, they were methodically robbing the house with Rhonda, carrying out memories piece by piece, like looters. Leon wasn't just silent, he helped. He distracted Tiana, drove her away, invented excuses so Rhonda could calmly rummage through their father's things. She's in debt up to her eyeballs, Tiana, Kira said, looking at Tiana with unexpected sympathy. She has 3 overdue loans. Bailiffs are after her. She's selling everything she can reach to plug the holes. And your house is just the biggest chunk. Thank you, was all Tiana could squeeze out. Kira nodded, putting the mask of an indifferent professional back on. Will the coat be ready on Friday? Yes, Friday after 5. When the door closed behind Kira, Tiana remained standing alone. The hum of machines, the hissing of steam, it all faded into the background. She clutched the piece of paper with addresses and dates in her hand. The paper was warm. Something finally flipped inside Tiana. Up to this moment, a tiny, foolish hope still lived in her that Leon was a victim, that he was just weak, led, that he didn't know what he was doing. But the watch, he took the watch off his father's wrist himself at the hospital. He said, "I'll save this for Gavin." And he was the one who took it to the pawn shop so Rhonda could pay another installment for her beautiful life. This wasn't weakness. This was complicity. Tiana neatly folded the paper and hid it in the pocket of her smock, close to her heart. Her movements became slow but precise. There were no more tears. There was only cold rage, heavy as an iron. She picked up the phone and dialed a number. Not Leon's. She called Golden Era Antiques. "Good afternoon," she said in a steady voice she didn't recognize herself. "I'm calling about the orders and medals in a blue velvet box. A woman brought them to you on Tuesday. No, I don't want to buy them. I want to know how much longer you will have them before you put them up for sale." She listened to the answer, nodded, and wrote something on the back of a receipt. The war she had declared just received a battle map, and now Tiana knew where to strike. That evening, Tiana returned home ready for a fight. The note with pawnshop addresses lay in her pocket, and cold, sharp phrases rang in her head with which she intended to nail her husband to the wall. She had rehearsed every word, but when she opened the door, she was met not by the smell of scandal, but by roasted chicken with garlic and rosemary. Leon stood in the hallway. He was clean-shaven, in a fresh shirt, not his work clothes. In his hands, he held a bouquet, not the standard 3 roses in cellophane, but an armful of field daisies, the kind Tiana loved in her youth. "Hi," he said quietly. There was no fear or aggression in his eyes, only fatigue and some new, unfamiliar humility. Tiana froze in the doorway, not letting go of her bag. All her fighting spirit ran into this unexpected softness and crumbled. "What is this?" she asked, nodding at the flowers. "It's for you." "I'm sorry, Tiana. I'm a fool." He walked over and awkwardly shoved the bouquet at her. Tiana took the flowers mechanically. They smelled of meadow and sun, overpowering the smell of city dust. "I've thought a lot these past days," Leon continued as she took off her shoes. "You're right, about everything. Rhonda, she's completely lost it. I tried to defend her because she's my sister, because Dad always said we have to stick together. But I got confused. I forgot who my real family is." He was saying exactly what Tiana had dreamed of hearing all these years. Words poured like balm on her wounded soul. In the kitchen, the table was set, a white tablecloth, salad, chicken. Leon fussed about, serving food, pouring her tea. He didn't try to touch her, kept his distance, like a guilty dog waiting for permission to approach. "I talked to her," he said when they sat down. "Talked tough. Told her no more schemes, no more pressure on you." Tiana looked up at him. For the first time in a week, she looked at him without disgust. "And? Did she scream?" "Of course." Leon chuckled crookedly. "Threatened me, but I said, either we do everything honestly, or I walk away from the deal entirely." "Tiana, listen." He leaned forward, placing his palm over her hand. His fingers were warm. "I understand why you don't want to sell the house. It's memories. But let's look truth in the eye. We can't afford it. The roof leaks, the boiler needs changing. It's a bottomless pit." He spoke calmly, reasonably, without hysterics. "I propose a compromise," he continued, looking her straight in the eyes. "We sell the house, but the money doesn't go to Rhonda. We open an account in Gavin's name, an untouchable trust for education, for an apartment for him in the future. Neither I nor Rhonda will be able to withdraw a cent until he's of age." Tiana was silent, thinking over his words. An account for Gavin. It sounded reasonable. It sounded safe. If the money was protected by the bank, Rhonda couldn't steal it. And the house? Maybe he was right. Maybe she was holding on to walls that were only dragging them down. "And the things?" she asked quietly. "The medals? The watch?" Leon lowered his eyes and pain reflected on his face. Real, unfeigned. "I'll get it all back, Tiana. I swear. I know where they are. I'll buy everything back, whatever it costs me. I'll take extra shifts, sell the truck if I have to. Gavin will get Grandpa's medals. I swear to you on our son's health." He swore the most terrible oath he could. Tiana's breath caught. Leon was superstitious. He would never swear on his son if he were lying. She looked at him, at the wrinkles by his eyes, at the familiar scar on his chin. This was her Leon, the one she fell in love with 10 years ago, the one who carried her in his arms when Gavin was born. He had stumbled. Yes, he was weak, but he found the strength to admit it and fix it. The icy lump in Tiana's chest began to melt. She felt the tension that had shackled her muscles for the last few days release. Her shoulders dropped. She took a deep breath. "You'll really bring everything back?" she asked, almost in a whisper. "Really?" He squeezed her hand tighter. "I want us to be okay. Just the three of us. You, me, and Gavin." Tiana nodded. Tears came to her eyes again, but these were tears of relief. "Okay," she said. "If the money goes to Gavin, I agree." Leon exhaled so loudly, as if he had dropped a bag of cement from his shoulders. He smiled, shyly, with hope. "Thank you, baby. Thank you for believing me." The rest of the evening passed in a fog of bliss. They drank tea, discussed which university Gavin would go to in 10 years. Leon joked, told funny stories from the construction site. Tiana laughed. For the first time in a long while, she laughed sincerely, throwing her head back. "Just one condition," Leon said before bed, as they were clearing the dishes. "Rhonda wants to meet tomorrow, one last time, a reconciliation dinner. She wants to apologize to you officially and discuss the details of the sale so everything is transparent." Tiana frowned. She didn't want to see Rhonda. "Is it necessary?" "Tiana, it's a formality," Leon coaxed gently. "We'll just sign the preliminary agreement where Gavin's account is written out so she sees I'm not joking. And that's it. You won't see her again if you don't want to. Please, let's close this door beautifully." Tiana looked at the daisies in the vase, at her husband's calm face. She wanted so much to believe that the nightmare was over, that they had endured, that family had defeated greed. "All right," she exhaled. "One dinner." Leon hugged her, holding her tight. Tiana buried her face in his shoulder, inhaling the smell of his shirt. Now it smelled only of fabric softener and his warmth. "No strange perfumes. Everything will be fine," he whispered into the top of her head. "You'll see. Everything will be fine." That night, Tiana slept without dreams, a deep, calm sleep of a person who finally reached the shore after a storm. She didn't know that this shore was just a mirage drawn on quicksand. Friday morning began with a sunbeam hitting her right in the eyes. Tiana stretched in bed, feeling an unusual lightness. Leon was already up. The sound of water came from the bathroom. His phone lay on the nightstand, the screen periodically lighting up, receiving messages. Tiana sat up, swinging her legs to the floor. She wanted to go put the kettle on. Surprise her husband. Breakfast in bed, like in the old days. She reached for her robe, and her gaze accidentally fell on Leon's phone screen. It lit up again. The message was long, and it displayed fully. Sender. Rhonda. Developer requires signature today by 6 o'clock, or the commission on the apartment expires. I told the antique guy we'll bring the rest of the silver tomorrow morning. Don't screw this up now, little brother. Press her. Dinner is on. Tiana froze. The letters on the screen blurred, gathering into black, poisonous snakes. Commission on the apartment. Silver tomorrow morning. Press her. The noise of the water in the bathroom suddenly became deafening, like the roar of a waterfall. Tiana felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her skin cold and numb. Yesterday's daisies, yesterday's vows, warm hands, eyes full of remorse. It was all a performance, a cheap, vulgar play acted out for a signature. He wasn't repentant. He was just stalling for time. He lulled her vigilance like putting a sick dog to sleep before the injection. The bathroom door opened. Leon came out, drying his head with a towel. He was humming something under his breath, pink, steamed, content. "Oh, you're up." He smiled at her with the same smile he swore on his son's health with yesterday. "I was thinking of making coffee." Tiana slowly raised her head. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching his phone in her hand. The smile slid off Leon's face like a poorly glued mask. He saw the phone. "Tiana," he began, taking a step forward. "Don't come near me." Her voice was quiet, but it sounded so cold that Leon stopped. "You misunderstood," he started babbling, putting his hands out. "That's an old message. It just came in late. Rhonda, she's just pressuring. But I promised you. Developer expects signature today," she interrupted, reading from the screen. "Commission on the apartment. Rest of the silver tomorrow. Which account for Gavin, Leon? What education? You are selling us for a commission, for a kickback to buy yourself a condo in that building from the picture." Leon was silent, his shoulders slumped. He didn't try to justify himself anymore. He just stood before her in a towel, pathetic and naked in his lies. "You were always like this," he suddenly said. His voice changed. It became hollow, angry. "Righteous Saint Tiana, we must live honestly. We must endure. And I'm tired of enduring, Tiana. I'm tired of living in this rotten house where every board creaks like an old grandmother. I want to live normally, like Rhonda." "Like Rhonda?" Tiana chuckled bitterly. "In debt? Stealing from relatives?" "Yes, even like that," he shouted. "At least she lives while we exist. You turned me into your shadow." "Leon, don't drink." "Leon, work. Leon, help Mom." "You strangled me with your righteousness. Rhonda at least believes in me. She thinks I deserve more. But you look at me like a loser. Always have." The words hit Tiana harder than a slap, because there was truth in them. She remembered how often she corrected him in public, how she redid housework after him, sighing demonstratively, how she solved all problems herself, not even giving him a chance to try. She really did consider him weak. She guarded him like a child, depriving him of the right to make mistakes, the right to make a man's decision, and by doing that, perhaps, she herself pushed him to his sister, to where he was flattered, where he was used, but where he felt important. "Maybe," she said quietly, "maybe I was a bad wife. Maybe I took too much on myself. I am guilty." Leon blinked in surprise. He didn't expect this. He expected screaming, hysterics. Tiana stood up. She put the phone on the nightstand. "I am guilty of not believing in you, but that doesn't give you the right to steal from our son, Leon. My mistakes don't justify your vileness. You could have left, you could have divorced, but you decided to sell your father's memory for a commission." She walked past him to the closet, took out clothes. "Dinner is still on," she said without turning around. "What?" Leon was taken aback. "Did you hear me? Dinner is on. We will go to Rhonda's and we will discuss everything." "Tiana, you agree?" Hope sounded in his voice, making Tiana nauseous. She turned to him. Now she was absolutely calm. It was the calmness of a person who has nothing left to lose. "I want everything to end, Leon. Today." She walked out of the bedroom, leaving him standing in the middle of the room. In the kitchen, Tiana poured herself water. Her hands didn't shake. She felt strangely fragile, as if her body was made of glass. One wrong move, and she would shatter into thousands of shards. Her marriage was a facade, a pretty picture hiding rot and emptiness. 10 years of life, 10 years spent trying to preserve a family that, as it turned out, never existed. There was only a convenient domestic life for Leon and an illusion of being needed for her. She looked out the window at the garden. The peonies Gavin had watered drooped under the hot sun. Tonight, everything would end. She didn't know exactly how yet. She didn't know what she would do. But she knew one thing. She would no longer be a victim, and she would no longer save Leon from himself. Tiana took the slip of paper with the antique dealer's phone number out of her purse. Yesterday, she just got information. Today, she needed to act. She dialed the number. "Hello, Golden Era." Her voice was hard as steel. "I called you yesterday regarding the medals. I'm coming in an hour and I'm taking them. No, I won't be buying them back. I'm coming with the police. Or we can come to a different arrangement. I have an offer you won't be able to refuse if you want to keep your license." She listened to the answer, and her lips pressed into a thin line. Tonight there would be dinner, and she would serve the truth for dessert. Cold, ruthless truth. Tiana didn't go to the cleaners. Instead, she took the bus and went to the outskirts to the old house. She needed to be there alone among the dust and silence before she did what she had to do. The house met her with the smell of heated wood and abandonment. The gate creaked, and that sound echoed in her heart with longing. Here, on the porch, her father-in-law loved to drink iced tea. Here, Gavin learned to walk. Would all this disappear, turn into faceless numbers in Rhonda's bank account? Tiana, is that you? She flinched and turned around. By the fence stood Mr. Wallace, the neighbor. The old man leaned on a shovel. His face was carved with wrinkles like the bark of an old oak. He was always a man of few words, stern, but now he looked at her with some strange anxiety. "Hello, Mr. Wallace." Tiana walked to the fence. "Just stop by to check if everything is okay." The old man grunted, wiping his forehead with a dirty glove. "It's okay. Only I saw a truck here the other day, came at night, thought it was thieves. Wanted to come out with my shotgun, then I looked. It's your Leon, and that Fury sister of his, carrying something into the trunk, scurrying around like roaches." Tiana lowered her eyes. Shame burned her cheeks, as if she were the one stealing things at night. "I know, Mr. Wallace. I'm sorry." "What are you apologizing for?" The old man squinted. "I see you carrying this house on your back alone. Leon. He's not a bad guy, but his spine is soft as putty. Whoever pushed last, that's the shape he takes." He set aside the shovel and reached into the inner pocket of his old quilted jacket. "Wait a minute. I have something for you here. His father, Stephen, left it with me before he died, said, 'If you see Leon completely losing his head, give this to Tiana. Only to her. She's a strong woman, she'll understand.'" Mr. Wallace handed her a small cookie tin, the kind old folks usually keep nails or buttons in. Tiana took it. The box was light. Something rustled inside. "Thank you," she whispered. She sat on the porch step and opened the lid. Inside lay a piece of paper folded in four, a regular sheet of graph paper written in the shaky but still firm handwriting of her father-in-law. "Son Leon, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. I know Rhonda will circle the house like a vulture. She is my daughter. I love her. But she has a hole in her soul that money can't plug. She will eat through everything and not notice. Don't let her burn our history, son. I built this house for the grandkids, for Gavin. Not so Rhonda could cover her debts for another scam. I know it's hard for you to say no to her. You were always afraid of offending her. But now you must be afraid of something else, losing yourself. If you sell the memory for her whim, you stop being my son. You become just a wallet. Listen to Tiana. She has a conscience. She has a backbone that you, forgiven old man, sometimes lack. Protect the house. Protect Gavin. Dad." Tiana reread the letter twice. Tears dripped onto the paper, blurring the ink. But these weren't tears of pity. These were tears of cleansing. Her father-in-law knew everything. He saw right through them, and he left her a weapon. Not legal, not financial, moral. Leon could lie to her. He could lie to himself. But he couldn't lie to the dead. He idolized his father. The fear of disappointing him was the only thing that could outweigh his fear of his sister. Tiana carefully folded the letter and put it back in the tin. She straightened her back. It was as if a switch clicked inside her. No more pleading, no more trying to understand. It was time to act tough. She took out her phone. The first call was to Kira. "Kira, it's Tiana Vance. Do you still want to help? I need you to send me a copy of Rhonda's IOU or any paper confirming her debts. Yes, I know it's confidential, but my son's fate is being decided tonight. Will you help me?" She listened to the answer, nodding to Kira's words. "Thank you. Send the photo to my phone. Right now." The second call was harder. The antique dealer, the one she spoke to in the morning. "It's me again," Tiana said. Her voice sounded like she was giving orders on a battlefield. "Regarding my morning visit, plans have changed. I'm not coming to pick up the items now. You will bring them yourself. Tonight, to the address I will name." Indignant muttering was heard on the other end of the line. "Listen to me carefully," Tiana interrupted. "Those items are stolen. I have a statement from a witness who saw them being carried out. If you don't bring them by 7 p.m. tonight, tomorrow morning you will have a search warrant executed on your place. But if you bring them, let's just say we'll consider that you took them for restoration. The choice is yours." She gave Rhonda's address. "By 7 o'clock. Don't be late." Tiana hung up. Her hands weren't shaking. She felt strangely calm, like a surgeon before a complex operation. She had to cut out the tumor that was devouring her family. It would be painful. There would be a lot of blood, but it was the only way to survive. She stood up, brushed off her dress, and looked at the old house. The windows, boarded up with plywood, looked at her blindly, but with hope. "I'll do it, Dad," she whispered into the void. "I won't give it up." Tiana walked out the gate, clutching the tin box in her hand. Now she had everything. Proof of Rhonda's debts, the stolen silver that would soon return, and her father-in-law's voice. She knew that tonight's dinner would be the last. Either Rhonda would leave their lives forever, or Tiana would leave Leon. There was no third option. And for some reason, clutching her father-in-law's letter, she knew Leon would make a choice. She would force him to make a choice, but the price of that choice would be high, higher than the cost of any apartment in Emerald Heights. Rhonda's apartment met them with the smell of expensive perfume and tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The table was set with ostentatious luxury, crystal, monogrammed napkins, caviar. Rhonda sat at the head of the table like a queen in exile in a black silk dress with perfect hair, but her eyes were darting around. Leon entered first, hunched over like a man walking to the scaffold. Tiana followed, holding her purse, inside which lay the tin box. "Well, finally." Rhonda didn't even stand up. "Sit down. Let's get this over with quickly. The lawyer sent the documents. Just need to sign." She carelessly tossed a folder onto the table right on top of the appetizer plates. Tiana sat down. She didn't pick up the folder. Instead, she looked at her watch. 5 minutes to 7. "Are we having tea?" she asked quietly. Rhonda scoffed. "What tea, Tiana? We are discussing business here. Sign it and drink buckets of it for all I care." At that moment, the doorbell rang. Rhonda frowned. "Who is that now? I'm not expecting anyone." Leon twitched, looking questioningly at his wife. Tiana sat motionless. "Open it, Rhonda," she said. "It's for you." Muttering curses, Rhonda got up and went to the hallway. A minute later she returned. Her face was white as chalk. Following her entered a courier from the antique shop. In his hands, he held a heavy bundle wrapped in rough cloth. "What is the meaning of this?" Rhonda hissed, looking at Tiana. "What did you set up?" Tiana stood up. She walked over to the courier, nodded to him, and took the bundle. It was heavy, cold. She placed it on the table right next to the folder of documents and unwrapped the cloth. Silver. 12 spoons with family monograms. The very ones they ate cake with at Gavin's 10th birthday. The very ones that disappeared during the move. Dead silence hung in the room. Leon looked at the spoons, his lips moving soundlessly. "Sit down, Rhonda," Tiana said. Now metal rang in her voice. "Now we will have tea." She took her phone out of her purse and placed it on the table screen up. On the screen glowed the photo of the IOU that Kira had sent. $3 million in debt, Tiana pronounced, looking her husband's sister in the eye. 3 overdue loans and a writ of execution that comes into force in a week. That's why you need the house sale so urgently. Not for Leon, not for us, so you don't go to jail for fraud. Rhonda was silent. Her mask of arrogance cracked. "And this?" Tiana took the tin box out of her purse and took out the letter. "For you, Leon." She handed her husband the folded sheet of graph paper. Leon took it with trembling hands. He recognized his father's handwriting instantly. While he read, only the ticking of the wall clock was audible in the room. Tiana saw her husband's face change, shame flooding his neck, tears welling up in his eyes. He read to the end and lowered the hand with the letter. His shoulders began to shake. "Don't let her burn our history," Tiana quoted from memory. "Your father knew everything, Leon. He knew you were weak, but he believed you would remember who you are." She looked around the room, luxurious, cold, alien. "Gavin is at Grandma's right now, but I can call him. Do you want me to put him on speaker? Let him listen to how his dad sold Grandpa's medals so Aunt Rhonda could buy herself a new car." "Don't!" Leon shouted. He covered his face with his hands. "Don't, Tiana, please." Rhonda suddenly jumped up. Her chair fell over with a crash. "Why are you listening to him?" she screamed, her face distorted with rage. "He's a rag! Dad always loved him more. Even though I was smarter, I clawed my way up. And him? Everything handed to him on a silver platter. House, family, job, and me? Debts! Sign it, Leon! Right now, or I'll tell everyone about your schemes at the construction site." Leon slowly raised his head. He looked at his sister as if seeing her for the first time. "No, Rhonda," he said quietly. "What?" "No." He stood up. Now he seemed taller. "I won't sign anything. And there won't be any more schemes. I'll tell everyone myself. About the site and about the silver. Let them judge me, but I won't be your wallet anymore." He took his father's letter and pressed it to his chest. "Get out of our lives, Rhonda. Deal with your debts yourself. You won't get another dime from us." Rhonda froze with her mouth open. She tried to say something, but the words stuck in her throat. For the first time in her life, her younger brother told her no, and she realized she had lost. Tiana silently gathered the spoons into the bundle. "Let's go home, Leon," she said. "We need to get the medals back." 6 months passed. Autumn this year turned out warm. The garden around the old house was strewn with gold leaves. Tiana sat on the porch, which they had finally repaired. Now a large cutting table stood here, piled with samples of expensive fabrics. The sign by the gate read, "Vance Workshop, Restoration and Tailoring." There were plenty of clients. Rumors about Tiana's magic hands, which could save any vintage dress, spread through the city quickly. She worked for herself in her own house and for the first time in many years felt like the mistress of her own life. The sound of a hammer could be heard in the garden. Leon was fixing the fence. He had lost weight, looked gaunt. More gray had appeared in his hair. He worked a lot, taking the hardest orders to pay off the debts they took out to buy back all of his father's things from the pawn shops. They hadn't divorced, but something between them had died forever. That carefree, blind love was gone. They lived together but slept in different rooms. Leon slept in his father's study on a narrow daybed. He tried to earn forgiveness not with words but with deeds. He cooked, cleaned, spent time with Gavin. He became a perfect father. But Tiana couldn't look at him with the old warmth anymore. When he touched her hand, she didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back either. She took a sip of tea from a cup with a thin gold rim. Gavin was running around the garden with a dog they had adopted from a shelter. "Mom, look!" he shouted, waving a stick. "We found treasure!" Tiana smiled. The smile was sad, but calm. Rhonda had disappeared. Rumor had it she moved to another city, hiding from creditors. Leon's extended family, the same ones who bullied Tiana in the chats, were silent now. No one called, no one visited. They remained just the three of them in this old, creaky house that had become their fortress. Leon walked up to the porch, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Want some tea?" Tiana asked. "I would." He sat on the step, not daring to come up to the porch with her without an invitation. Tiana poured him tea and handed him the mug. Their fingers touched. This time she didn't pull her hand away immediately. "Thank you," he said, looking her in the eyes with the same guilty devotion as 6 months ago. "Drink it while it's hot," she answered. The sun was setting, flooding the garden with soft amber light. Tiana looked at her son, at her husband, at the house she had fought for. She had won. She had preserved the legacy. But the price of this victory, loneliness together, would remain with her forever. And yet, inhaling the smell of autumn leaves and fresh tea, she felt peace. Life went on, and it was her own. Dear friends, that is the story. Honestly, when I read about that dinner at Rhonda's, I had goosebumps myself. What do you think? Did Tiana do the right thing? Will she ever be able to truly forgive Leon? Or as they say, you can't glue a broken cup back together, and they'll just live as neighbors under one roof? After all, on one hand, he betrayed her terribly. But on the other, he did choose his family, even if it was, figuratively speaking, at gunpoint. Does a person deserve a second chance if they stumbled so badly? Write in the comments what you think. What would you have done in Tiana's place? Kicked the husband out or gave him the opportunity to redeem himself like she did? If the story touched you, please hit the like button. It helps other people see it. And definitely subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation. And if you want to know how Tiana's life unfolds further, write, "I want part 2." If we get enough requests, we will definitely tell you what happened a year later, wishing you all the best. At the end of this video, a window will appear in the middle of the screen. Please click on that window. It will have our other most interesting stories. Peace.